in 2007, 2008.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yours would have to have some massive benefit going for it to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
higher ranked.
Sure, yeah. Of course, of course.
And I think if you look at the people who have, had massive growth of a channel on YouTube, it wasn't just YouTube. Often they had a million-strong following somewhere before they went there.
Right, right.
So it's very easy to have this sense, this guy just started a year ago and today he has 360,000 subscribers and I can say the same things he can say.
Yeah. But it's not so straightforward. Not so straightforward.
What I've seen is, there's a couple of people who've been very successful in setting up a Spanish language channel, copying essentially what I share in English.
Okay.
And to be the Spanish language version of personal development, leadership, communication. And another is, what can grow subscribers is often not what's interesting to me in terms of my own learning. So there's this trade-off between what do I enjoy doing and want to do versus what actually attracts new people to subscribe.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the challenges of communication is the more expert you become, the more distant from the problem that affects the masses you become.
Oh.
So, if someone is a PhD and 20-year doctoral research investigator into black holes, and a 6-year-old kid says, "What's a black hole?"
Can't
the level of
it.
the explanation is gonna, it's gonna be true. But the guy is 30 years away from remembering, wow, a black hole. And I think this is a challenge for leaders all across the world, that you forget how little you knew when you started out.
Yeah.
And how rudimentary some of the things that are valuable to someone starting today are.
You lose touch in that way with what you need to communicate, which is ironic.
Yep. And there, I do think on YouTube, you got to pick one of two strategies.
Sorry to interrupt there, but I'm just gonna make this live. Is that all right? Is everyone ready?
Okay, we're gonna 3, 2, 1. Fantastic.
Yeah. Just a reminder, Ronan, Anne Morgan first, then Mark McCormick. Okay.
Okay. 2 live questions. Okay. Very good.
3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon, and welcome to our Timony webinar this week on Leading with Intention. My name is Ronan O'Farrell, and I'm the CEO of Timony Leadership Institute, a not-for-profit dedicated to supporting leaders. Quite a few of you alumni have had the opportunity to partake in our leadership workshops out in IESE Business School, our associate school in Barcelona. Very enjoyable few days out there. And we'd planned to be there, in fact, in June for the final module of our program, but alas, a little virus got in the way, so we have to postpone that for the moment. But this week, our guest on the Timony webinar is a lecturer in leadership communications in IESE, Conor Neal, and he always extends a very warm Irish welcome to us whenever we visit, if he isn't in another part of the globe lecturing. And Conor is also a president of Vistage Spain, part of the world's leading CEO organization. He's an entrepreneur himself and has founded 5 companies, including one selling private jets. And he's a visiting professor also at University College Dublin, and he lives in Barcelona with his family there. Lucky Conor. So, Conor, you're no stranger to webinars and videos like this. You've quite a following on YouTube, and certainly I'd recommend people to check it out. Every Tuesday, there's always a very interesting video up there, thought-provoking and challenging. But video communications have really taken center stage. Just before we came on air there, you were talking a little bit about how you got into YouTube, at least the monetization of YouTube, which involved your daughter, if I got her correctly.
Absolutely. No, I think for me, YouTube began probably back 2006, 2007. back when I was running the private jet airline, we had a couple of promo videos that I just put onto YouTube more as a simple way of sharing via email. And then, you know, I spend a lot of my life in normal times stood on a stage speaking to groups of 100 to 1,000 in conferences at companies, in institutes like Timony. You know, over the last 2 months here in Spain, the lockdown has been pretty severe. I have my parents in Dublin. I have a sister and a brother in Dublin. And I think that the degree to which the lockdown has affected us in Spain compared to Ireland has been extreme. The first 6 weeks, I didn't leave the four walls of my apartment here in Barcelona. I went downstairs once to put the rubbish into the container, and I went out once to go and buy fruit and vegetable.
Wow.
But for the first 6 weeks, my life was in the 140 square meters of our apartment here, looking through a window out at the world. And, you know, I think that was a very curious process. I think in my life, I've never lived anything like that. My father was born in the last days of the Second World War. So I guess, you know, he didn't live through a war. My grandparents lived through a war. You know, this isn't a war, but this is certainly a globe bringing an experience in common event that I guess 20 years from now, instead of asking where were you when Neil Armstrong landed on the moon, or where were you when JFK was shot, it's where were you in the confinement, in the quarantine related to coronavirus. And I think one of the things that I am highly aware of is how little we remember of our past. And one of the habits that, and you know, my mission on this webinar, speaking to you group of leaders, is not just to talk and make some noise. I want a couple of actions that you do today, and ideally, if these actions can become part of your normal life, it will have a dramatic impact, not on how you are today or tomorrow, but how your leadership becomes over 5, 10, 15 years. And you know, when I've had the privilege of lunches or dinners with the Timony groups that come over here to Barcelona, I think one of the ways I talk about leadership is there's a saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. The problem in our lives is the apple never just is sat there alone. If you were at the IESE Business School at the moment on a Timony leadership workshop, you'd come out of the classroom, you'd come to the break area, there would be apples, but right next to the apple, you would find chocolate donuts, Kit Kats, Mars bars. So it's never just an apple sitting there in life. It's always an apple next to a donut. And what tends to happen in life is today, you're a little bit tired. It was a slow morning. You come out, you see the apple, you see the donut, and you say to yourself, just today, I'm a little bit tired. I could do with the pick me up, and you take the donut. And do you know what happens if today you choose the donut instead of the apple? Nothing. No one notices. You come home, and in the FaceTime from Barcelona back to your family, your wife, your husband, your kids don't say, oh my God, did you choose the donut? Nothing changes. If every day this week you come out and instead of the apple, you take the donut, nothing changes. No one notices a difference. Your belt is still in the same setting. If every day this month you take the donut, still nothing changes. But over the course of 10 years, the choice day after day to take the donut instead of the apple begins to really pay a price. People start to notice your belts start to not just be the same belt on a wider setting, but a bigger belt. And to me, so much of leadership is not about reacting today. It's about planting seeds today that change the course of where your life is going to be in 5 and 10 and 20 years. And what I have seen in my time in the last 18 years teaching on leadership programs at IESE Business School and other wonderful programs. For the last 4 years, I've been the leader in Spain of a project called Vistage. And Vistage, we bring together CEOs, typically 5 million to 100 million turnover, teams anywhere from 20 to 2,000 people. And we work with them to take decisions that put them in a better place in a week, in a year, in 10 years. And very often the challenge is to get people out of reactive mode and into intentional leadership mode. Get people out of thinking, what do I do now, versus what if I do now, my future self 10 years from now will look back and be so grateful. And what I found is a lot of people expected that this coronavirus quarantine would be a wonderful time to stop and have time to plant those seeds. And I think a lot of people who had that approach have become very frustrated with their sense that they lack discipline. I've had many communications in meetings, in emails, of people that started a book project, started writing, started a blog, and after 2 or 3 weeks of this quarantine have got stuck. And I think life, the different pieces fit together. For me, writing and running go together. When I'm able to go out here in Barcelona, behind Barcelona, there's a mountain called Tibidabo. And along Tibidabo, there's a running track. It's a walking, running track, but for me, it's a running track that runs 9 kilometers, so 18 kilometers backwards and forwards. When I go and run along that track, I start with my mind full of noise and things I need to do and urgent things that I've forgotten to do this morning. And as I run at about 10 minutes, my mind starts to clear of all the urgent things. And about 20 minutes, my mind has forgotten about all the things that I forgot to do today, I promised I would do yesterday. And I start to connect with what's important, with why I'm doing the things I'm doing. And I found one of the hardest parts of this now 10th week of confinement, of quarantine, is that aspect of my life of going for a run has been taken away. And I think I don't go for a run to get fit. It's not a health thing. I go for a run to get clarity in my head. And my writing, I've had more time to write, but I'm not getting the clarity in my head. And I think identifying some of the habits that you have in normal life that help give clarity to other aspects of your life, and not getting frustrated with yourself now. And I think I've had so many people getting very frustrated with their own sense of lack of discipline.
Because you'd imagine that you could, in this scenario, with less pressure, less trips, and so on and so forth,
Yep.
You have more time to form that habit, whatever it takes, 60 days or something like that, to actually get it in place. But if anything, probably one of the insights that I've got from this period is that even though you have that time in theory, unless you really have the desire to achieve something and have that goal in mind that you're day in, day out, it isn't going to happen, even if you have time. Other things will fill the time, and you'll obviously have other challenges as well, being locked up.
Yeah. And I guess, to give some context to this time that we're spending together, the primary courses that I teach to senior business leaders is what's called persuasive communication, speaking as a leader. How does a leader speak such that the audience takes action that they would not have taken without hearing your words? And to me, I very much have a view that you shouldn't teach something that you're not able to put into practice yourself. And my life, if I go back to my childhood in Dublin, I remember one of the first things that my father said to me was, those that can do, those that can't teach. And that idea was put into my head a long time ago, and it took me a long time to, if you look on my LinkedIn profile, for most years it was entrepreneur and teacher. It was never teacher and entrepreneur. But to me, it was very important never to lose touch with the doing. And in particular, in business school and the types of challenges that business leaders face. One of the things I think I'd say to any young professor, that the answer to every question in a business school is it depends. And all the genius comes after it depends, and depends on each specific context. There are very few rules in business that just apply to everyone. And there's very few things that I can give you now that's just a cookie cutter approach that you can apply to life. But broadly speaking, if I was to summarize everything I teach into less than a minute, it would be to speak well, you need to do 4 things. 1, have something to say. 2, say it well. 3, say it with intensity. 4, connect with the audience. And those 4 things, have something to say. The most powerful thing that you have to share with the world is your own experience of life. 20 years ago, there wasn't the internet. It was difficult to get access to information. Today, if my daughter wants to know about Kazakhstan, she doesn't come in here and ask me. She pulls out an iPad or she goes on her Mac and she searches in Google. So, my role in my daughter's life, my role in my team's life at Vistage, if they ask me a question, I can be pretty sure that there's enough resources that if their question was, tell me about it, they can find it. And, I've spent a long time looking at mastermind groups of leaders. How do we learn from others about how to live our life well? Because I believe that there's only 2 ways that we learn as human beings. 1, through experience. So through our own experience. The second, we can learn through others' experience, but only if it comes with 3 parts. 1, what happened? 2, why was it important to them? What did it mean to them? What particular significance did this event have for them, being who they are, having the parents they have, the upbringing, whatever challenges they had as a kid? What did it mean? And the third, what was the inner emotional experience like? Because a decision is normally difficult, not because, A or B, but because of the doubt you feel about whether you're capable, whether you're the one that has the right to take this decision. I think for me, it took many years to become comfortable with the types of decisions that I had to take as a leader of a business. And in particular, the decision to let someone go from our business. And I remember back in my first couple of companies, it would take me 3 months of worry and anxiety about who do I think I am to have the right to decide that someone doesn't have a future in this company. What gives me the right to make this decision? And it was only by spending time with mentors and with other CEOs and other entrepreneurs, and not just hearing what they've done, but hearing why it was important, what it meant, what did the team mean to them? What did hiring someone mean to them? What was it like for them when they had to take the decision? What was it like for them to sit in front of someone and say, look, we've been together for 3 years. Thank you for your time, but there's not a future role that's going to allow you to be the best that you can be. So to me, the most valuable thing we can share as leaders is our experience. And one of the apple habits, so remember the apple and the donut, the apple habits, if you don't write down day after day what your experience of life is like now, if you don't note down what your worries are, what thoughts are on your mind, who's coming into your mind in a notebook, the moment this lockdown finishes, you'll forget everything about what it was like to live now. Most people, if you ask them, where were you on the 20th of May last year? Unless Facebook pops up a little photo to remind you where you were, you have no idea. I was very lucky. Growing up, age 14, my father's job moved from Dublin to Chicago. So I left Wesley College, small school, South Dublin, to go to Chicago, where I entered New Trier Township High School. 4,000 students, an entire city block. And it was a really difficult switch. You know, I went from somewhat popular to a freak, an outsider, someone who spoke what was nominally the same language, but in a way that they just didn't understand. I dressed in clothes that were cool for a 14-year-old Irish boy, but they were just weird for American teenagers. And it was very tough for me to make that shift. But I came across the teacher that has had the greatest impact on my life in that time in Chicago, Mr. Matz. Eric Matz was a teacher of biology. And he started the class by holding up the textbook and saying to the class, "How much is this worth?" And a few apathetic 14-year-olds, $30. He says, "Yeah, at the end of this year, if you've learned everything in this book, you're worth $30 more. That's not the point of this class. If at the end of this class, you've learned to be curious about the world, you've learned to look at how different systems interact. You see the tree and the squirrel and the grass, and you think about how those systems interact and play out and impact upon each other, and you have curiosity, you're worth infinitely more." That's what this course is about. And you know, a 14-year-old Irish boy hitting that environment, I think I categorized him as, you know, typical American positive talker. How long will this last? And he started every day by saying, "It's a great day." He walked into every class and he said, "It's a great day." And again, a 14-year-old apathetic Irish boy just thought, "Oh, how American." But he didn't mean that the world came out the right way today. He meant he was going to make today a great day. And every day he knew that he could make that class a great class. And that's what he did. And the final thing that I took from Mr. Matz, his rule, the last 5 minutes of every class, pen touching paper in your journal. And pen touching paper, don't lift it up. He just wanted to see all of us there, pens touching paper in our journal. Day one, I don't know what he wants with this. Day two, he's continuing to ask for this. I don't know what he wants. Day three, he told us he isn't even going to read it. There's no grade related to it. What's the point? Day four, my mom said something interesting in the car. Day five, my brother looked a bit upset today. I've had the habit of just noting down in a journal where I am, what's going on, what worries I have, what today is about, what's going on, all the days of my life. And you know, I have a drawer over here full of the journals ever since I was 14 years old.
Yeah. I heard that on a previous video webinar you did, you mentioned about an approach or practice you have called 10-10-10. Is that related to that?
10-10-10. So, well, this, you know, I think there's a typical podcaster question that, you know, if you could communicate with the whole universe for 20 seconds, what would you say? Or if you could get something out. And for me, what it would be, and, you know, our title here, intentional leadership. If there's one thing that shows an intentional leader, it's how you begin your day. And you know, Mr. Matz began his day with an intent. Today is going to be a great day. I choose to make today a great day. I choose to take the ingredients that come towards me and make the best with what comes. But you know, probably, you know, the story that captures this idea of starting the day slowly came to me from Ken Blanchard. Ken Blanchard is the author of The 1 Minute Manager. The 1 Minute Manager is a small little fable of a book. You can read it in less than an hour. 3 things great leaders should do. And they're even more important when it's uncertain outside. So the 1 Minute Manager, you can read it. You can probably download a PDF Cliff Notes and read it in 10 minutes. But the book itself, under an hour, 3 things great leaders do. And In 2008, Ken Blanchard came to Spain. It was late 2008 when we were in the financial crisis. And probably November 2008, I was invited to a lunch, 20 entrepreneurs with Ken Blanchard. And we were in crisis. And my business at that time was private jets. I had 16 private jets and they weren't moving. Post Lehman Brothers bankruptcy, not a lot of people were traveling on private jet. And Ken Blanchard's talk to us was 3 things great leaders do in times of crisis. And I remember it was, be a beacon of hope, remain grateful, be encouraging. Nothing world changing, just reminders of things that we do know. At the end of his talk, we had a lunch and I happened to be sat quite near Ken. The first thing I said to Ken was, Ken, that was a wonderful talk, brilliant. Which is the best thing you can say to anyone after a webinar or after a talk. If you ever approach a speaker, just tell them it was brilliant.
Doing really well, Conor. You're doing really well.
Excellent. That's what I needed to hear. Ronan, you're down in my book of geniuses.
And in the chat that's at the bottom here, the webinar, please do, add in any comments or questions, and also in the Q&A box actually for Conor.
Absolutely. And one of the challenges I find is making the shift from video to interaction, and how to make interaction real rather than forced.
Difficult,
but
we'll get there.
We're learning. And for 2,000 years we've learned how to teach in a room with people with us. The next 2,000 years will we figure out how to teach when you're not in a room all together and with this type of interaction. Ken Blanchard, after the talk, I tell him, Ken, great talk. I said, Ken, you're the leader of a business, 420 employees around the world. Ken, most mornings I wake up and I find inside myself the motivation, the energy, the inspiration to be a beacon of hope, to be the grateful one, to be the chief encourager in my company. 29 days every month, I wake up and there's something in me that gives me the energy to go and be this, be the beacon of hope, be the encourager, be this just grateful person. And I said, Ken, there's one day every month that I wake up and it's just not there. The energy to be this positive force, to be this beacon of hope, it's not there. And the way I feel is I've been pushing, I've been encouraging, I've been giving for 29 days. Today is somebody else's turn. Someone else from the team needs to pick up the reins, pick up the energy and pull, because today I need a breather. And I said, Ken, does that ever happen to you? And Ken at the time, 82 years old, I remember he was walking with a cane and he laughed a bit like Yoda, and then he looked at me and he said, start the day slowly. And he said the way he starts every morning is when he wakes up from his bed, before he leaves his bedroom, he just takes a few moments. And what he says is he will wake up and he will sit on the edge of his bed. And he'll just sit there on the edge of his bed and he'll take his hands and he'll place them palms down upon his knees and he'll listen to his body. He'll listen to his mind. He'll hear the concerns, the thought, the worries, all the different noise running through his head. And he'll listen until he's heard everything that's going on in his head. Then he'll listen to his body. Maybe there's a bit of pain here. Maybe the back's a bit sore. He'll just feel and listen to everything that's going on inside him. And he says it can take 4, 5, 6 minutes to hear all the noise, to feel all that's going on. At the end, when he feels that he's heard all the noise here and all the messages from his body, he turns his hands, palms up, places them back on his knees, and he asks himself the question, at the end of the day today, what do I want to be grateful for? And he waits and allows himself to form an answer. And when he shared this with me back in 2008, I thought, that's it. Every single morning I'm starting with this routine. I'm going to do this. And I would say I've worked hard at having some routine that the first thing I do is just a little listen of what's going on, a little listen to what are the worries, what's the noise in my head, listening, not solving them, just allowing myself to be aware of all the noise. And then very often what I'll do in my notebook is, if I've got some time, I have a longer version. The shortest version, I write down the sentence, today is about, and I finish the sentence. And very often it's one or two words. Today is about connecting. And this morning, looking through the different Zoom calls that I had on my agenda, one of the things that happens to me is, people tell me I'm a business school professor. Sometimes I feel drawn to become a leader guru. That's not who I am. I've not written these books behind me. I'm an entrepreneur who wants to help others through the experiences that I've done well and done badly. And when I write down in the morning, today is about connecting, it reminds me that my mission here, through this small keyhole that I speak to all of you there in Ireland, and to Ronan, is to connect, is that what I share resonates from my experience to the experience that you're having of facing this time, this extraordinary time. It's not an ordinary time. I was listening to a webinar last week, 2 weeks ago, with an Indian guru called Sadhguru. And he said two things that I loved. One, if you're not feeling uncertainty right now, you're blind. Yeah, if you're trying not to feel uncertainty right now, it's trying to be blind. Yeah. No politician knows whether it's 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. No medical officer knows whether it's 2 weeks to vaccine, 2 years, 10 years. Nobody knows. So uncertainty is real. And if you allow it to seep in and get into you all the time, you're right, it's there. The second thing that Sadhguru shared that really resonated with me, he said, when you're driving in the fog and uncertainty, when you're driving along in the fog, the last thing you want is more inspiration. If you're driving in the fog and you can't see too much into the future, you don't want to slam your accelerator down and go faster. He said, when you're driving in the fog, don't seek inspiration, seek clarity. And what I've been working with all our Vistage CEO members with all the webinars is, how can you use this time not to get inspiration so you feel good about pushing hard to the future, but you take this time not to go faster, but to go and really clarify what is important, what is not important. And perhaps one of the things that has most helped me learn about my life in the last 4 years is each afternoon, again, in this journal, I put a line in the middle and I put love, hate, and everything of the last 24 hours that has given me energy, that I've enjoyed, that has left me feeling good, I put in the left. And that includes people, activities, thoughts, books that I've read, everything that sucks my energy, I put in the right. And that includes people, experiences, challenges. And it's not a huge drawn out thing, but each day around 4 o'clock, I just stop and note down over the last 24 hours, what has filled me with energy, what has given me a sense of positivity, and what has sucked my energy. And one of the things that I realized probably 2 years ago was the single greatest detractor of my quality of life is the feeling of being in a hurry. And there's two ways that I generate for myself this feeling that I'm in a hurry. One way is feeling that I'm 47, I've got until 60 to really achieve all of the economic successes that I have. So I've only got a 13-year window to really have an impact as a business person. And I don't know how that belief got in, but it was definitely there. This sense that, somehow human life, 0 to 20 studies, 20 to 30 your first job, figure out business, and then from 30 to 50 is a real opportunity to make a name for yourself and get a position of responsibility, get some resources. 50 to 60s have the huge impact, and then 60 onwards you just retire and I'd never really thought about this, but I realized somehow that idea had gotten into me. And 2 years ago, the feeling that I had 13 years to have an impact, or my life was not going to amount to a business success, I just started to question that. And one of the ways that I thought seriously about that is, well, they say a girl born in Ireland in the last few years, her life expectancy is 100. And, if we take care of ourselves, if you eat well, if you stay fit, my grandfather lived to 98. And he drank and he smoked and didn't have the medical services of today. So, the genes are possible. If I treat myself well, and I'm careful about stress and careful about eating and I'm careful about physical exercise, there's a chance that I'll be still around and functioning at 100.
How are you careful about stress? If I can.
Well, I think, I'm just now thinking on the time, 34. So there's a whole Connor life. I would say Connor Neal is two human beings, one 0 to 34 years old. Connor, 0 to 34 years old. My idea of success, lots of money. And everything that I was doing from the age of 20 through to 34 years old was entirely focused on in front of any decision, which takes me to more money in the bank by the time I'm 50. My aim when I started as an entrepreneur was 30 million euros in the bank by the age of 42. And my plan was create 4 companies and sell each one for 10 times what I'd sold the previous one. And 2008, I was 33 years old. I was on my 4th company, TaxiJet. And July 2008, I had an offer on my table, purchase by Gestair, the largest Spanish private jet operator, of my company for 10 million euros. I had it on my desk in the airport. All I had to do was sign the sale of my business for 10 million euros. And in July 2008, I thought my business was worth 100 million. This was the big one. This was the one that was going to go for it. And I didn't sign. September 15th, 2008, Lehman Brothers went bankrupt. I cannot tell you how many millions of times I asked myself, why didn't you sign that insert word contract? I probably 1,000 times a day from 15th of September through all of 2009, I was self-punishing for the stupidity of not signing that deal. By February 2009, I had to lay off all of the pilots and the mechanics and the commercial team that I'd spent years recruiting and training. Myself and my wife, our relationship separated. So I found myself March 2009, living on a mattress in the office, an empty office, mattress under my desk, asking myself, what did I do to deserve this? I did nothing wrong. I didn't cheat anyone. I didn't break my word. I've never done anything wrong. Why is this happening to me? And that year 2009, I was not a positive, encouraging beacon of hope. I was a negative, angry, frustrated with the universe, a sense that it was not my fault. It was the world's fault. A cruel universe had unfairly picked on me. I had done everything right and I didn't deserve this to happen to me. And through 2009, I was just dealing with court cases and legal struggles and the challenges of unraveling a company with a lot of debt. By the end of 2009, they reached a time where there were no more court cases to deal with. There was no more lawyers to meet, human resources, things to deal with. And somewhere towards the end of 2009, I just threw in the towel. I didn't get out of bed. And I spent 4 days that I didn't leave the bed other than a visit to the bathroom. And it really felt that I'd had my go at life, that I'd had my go, and in some way, game over for Conor. And you know, I used to play video games as a kid. The metaphor I had was, it was like a video game where you've lost your last life. The scoreboard is not changing, it's stuck. But somehow there's this bug in the system and you can still control the character. But nothing your character does affects your score. And towards the end of 2009, that was the feeling that, you know, my score has stopped. You know, I've lost, done. And I don't know why I'm still around. I don't know why I'm still operating here, because I can't affect my score. And I think a few different things happened. One, a good friend of mine dragged me to London to a workshop called The Breakthrough Experience with Dr. John Demartini. And yeah, this was, I think some things have to come just at the right time for you. And this came just at the right time for me. His first question, he was about 80 people in a hotel room in London. And John asked us all when we began, make a list of the people with whom you hold the greatest negative emotional charge. And me in 2009 just took out my list. And it's like my father, my mother, my ex-wife, investors, bankers, clients that let us down. Every single human being was somehow responsible for me. And then he said, now you need to pick one. We're going to work on the one most heavily negatively emotionally charged relationship. And I remember at the time it was between my ex-wife and my father. And being, you know, an efficient management consultant, I put my hand up and said, "Can I do two? I'm smarter than the rest. Can I do two? You know, I know the rest of these guys could only do one. And they said, just pick one. You can come back and do the course again and do the other one." So, and I picked my ex-wife. And the next hours in that workshop were just this series of questions of what would life been like if the opposite had happened, and just time and time again you had to go back and look what you would have lost if your fantasy had happened, what you gained because of something difficult. And you know, the whole group of us were in that room from 9 a.m. on a Saturday morning till 4 a.m. when the final person finished the process. And when I walked out of that room, I had a total fundamental change in how I look at what happens in the world. And one of Demartini's senses is the universe is perfect. Nothing bad happens, nothing good happens. Things happen for us to grow. And the universe will keep sending you the lesson until you grow in the right way. And I guess the way I think about this idea and how it came clear to me at the end of 2009 were three concepts: faith, hope, and love. And faith was, you know, right now I am where I'm supposed to be. Every decision that Conor took at 23 years old, at 30 years old, at 33 years old, not signing the page, every decision I took was the best decision that I could have taken at that age. If I can look back now and regret the decision I took at 23 or 33 or 35 or 42, it's because I'm wiser now, but I wasn't wiser back then. And the only way I can look at my past self is with a sense of total compassion that Conor at 15 and 18 and 23 did the best that he could do. And today I'd take a different decision. But back then I was only capable of the decision I took. And probably when I'm 57, I'll look back at decisions I'm taking now with the same level of compassion and a little bit of, you moron. How could you be so short-sighted? Yeah. So this faith is a compassion for yourself. And I guarantee you don't live a human life without having a decision in the past that you regret somewhat today. And this is just letting go of that. You did the best you could, and the only way you know better now is because you made the mistake. So the other is, faith is, if you're on this call, if you're listening in on this Zoom today, there's something for you now. And if you pay attention, you may gather it now, it may be later, but there's a reason we're all here on this call. If I'm attention, I pay attention, there's something for me in this call. So in a way, that faith is just stop doubting the world, doubting my past, and know that wherever I am is where I need to be. So if I'm here, there's something for me. Hope, action changes the future. Intention doesn't change the future. Thinking doesn't change the future. Only action changes the future. Thinking I should call my father changes nothing. Only picking up the phone, dialing the digits, or today FaceTiming, whether I get to speak to him or I get voicemail or it just leaves a missed call, the action changes the future. And so there's always an action that I can take now that changes the future. No matter how bad the situation is, no matter how challenged I am, there's always something that I can do now that changes the trajectory of my life and the people around me in the future. So, faith is acceptance of the past. Hope is that we can change the future. We never lose our capacity to be agents, to take decisions and turn them into action that makes a difference now and in the future of who we are and who the people around us are. And the third, love. Love is that when I ask questions in my head, I never want me to be the center of the question. What do I get from this webinar with Timony? That's me in the center of the question. What does Ronan need from me today? What do the participants, Kieran, Chris, Celine, Brian, what do you need from me today? What does my daughter need from me today? What does my mother need from me today? What does my father need from me today? And love to me is I put other people at the center of the questions within my head. And what I found is the question, what does Connor get from this? Yeah, I could probably define it, but it's not as meaningful. It doesn't connect me to what's important, as well as putting down the people that are important and just asking, what do they need from me today? And almost before any call, before each day, I go through the list of people that I'm going to interact with during the day. And I may not have an answer for all, but I do ask, what will they need from me today? Where are they coming from? What's their context right now? What are they dealing with? And just the sheer fact of putting myself into the shoes of the other and imagining how they're going to come to connect, what's going on, it just shapes the way I engage and I interact. In the last 4 days, my 4-year-old has gone from using stabilizer wheels on her bicycle to no stabilizers. And my 4-year-old hates being told what to do. So I have to say, I used these superpowers over the last 4 days that each morning I knew we were going to be going out and helping her take off the stabilizer wheels. And for an hour, I'm just going to be there. And I know that if I say, you've got to do it like this, she'll do it every way but like this. But if you're there and you're present and you just let her, eventually she will ask you the question. And for me, if I hadn't had this habit of in the morning just thinking, I need to be patient today with my daughter. If I didn't, as we walked out towards where we were practicing, just think, Connor, your relationship with her is more important than her cycling in the next 20 minutes. And I know that one of my big flaws in life is I can very quickly value the project more than the people and damage relationships in order to achieve success. I think my first 5 businesses that I started, I created my own hell. I created a hell for me as the founder and as the leader, because I placed greater importance on achieving objectives than connecting to the human beings that are around me. And and being flexible on objectives, but valuing deeply the relationships and the quality of people and helping others grow. And I'm not there yet, but these habits of just stopping in the morning and thinking about the day. And to me, if all the world would just take 30 seconds each morning and ask themselves, at the end of the day today, what do I want to be grateful for? And allow some images to appear. You may not avoid all the dangerous overreactions, dangerous frustrations that you'll have during the day. But I love that there's a definition of success from Pema Chodron that I would love to live as if this was true. I have a lot of work to go before this becomes true, but Pema Chodron says success is that as you're lying in your bed tonight, your eyes are closed, you're in the last moments of consciousness before falling into a sleep. You review the day, you look through all that has happened in the course of the day, and you find one moment where you were about to react and you didn't. Today is a success. And she says, and tonight, even if as you lie in your bed, your eyes are closed, you review all of the day and you don't find a single moment where you didn't react, today is still a success because you're aware. And the likelihood that tomorrow will be better is just that little bit higher. And I think leadership always requires intention, always requires a conscious decision that you're going to respond as your best self, not your reactive self. And uncertainty pushes us more towards reptilian self. Doubt pushes us towards reptilian self. Taking away the habits that make you feel good about yourself, whether it's going into the office and seeing that people value you. This makes you feel worse about yourself and heightens the chance that there's going to be an overreaction to a small, insignificant event. I remember about 4 weeks into this quarantine, I was playing cards with my wife and my elder daughter, who's 13. And I think 2 or 3 things had happened in the morning that left me frustrated. We're playing cards after lunch. And I think I lost 3 hands in a row where I was this close. And I had an infantile epileptic fit in front of them and threw the cards and stormed off back to my office. And
little Connor was back.
Little Connor was back. And I guess the sad thing that I find is I would hope that after years of teaching this stuff, after years of practicing this stuff, I'd stop being an infantile version of a 47-year-old. But to me, I think one way that came out of my life, 2008, 2009. So I talked about, Connor 0 to 34. Success was about money, about fame, about prestige, about being seen by my peers from my MBA, from my university as a success. 34 till today, I have a very different definition of what success is. And, what gave me meaning in 2008, 2009, in thinking, I've lost all my money, I've lost my family, I've lost the company that was giving me prestige. What did I gain? And, what I gained is stories that resonate and connect to other people. And the way I teach today is totally fundamentally different than the teacher you would have met when I was 33 and 34. To me, one of the things that really struck me was at 34 years old, I had a degree from a great university, Nottingham in the UK. I had an MBA from the best MBA school in the world, ESA Business School, and I was not prepared for a crisis. I was not prepared to take decisions when I could see my business falling apart, when I had to accept losses. I was just not emotionally prepared for life. And the way I teach now, I worry far less about the tools and the techniques and the cases. I worry about 2 things. And I believe if I can get 2 things across to a human being in one of my classes, then my work is done. One is self-belief, that they are enough, that whatever you decide is important, if you're willing to put the time and the effort in, you will make something of it. Self-belief. And the second is self-confidence, that you can, that even if it's going to take you 10 years to practice the skill, what I want to achieve in the time that we're together is I show you by doing a little bit of work that you can get better. And in communication, if I can give you a structure and push you to use a structure and push you to do the practice such that in 4 hours you stand up in front of a group of people and in 3 minutes you say something more clearly, more concisely, more powerfully than you've ever said it before, and you see for the first time how an audience reacts to that type of leadership, you're never going to go back to an unprepared, poorly structured ramble of a speech. So, and I think as a leader and as a parent, these are things that matter.
Conor, I was going to jump in there. I know we've a few questions that our attendees would like to ask, and I know there's two that we've been notified of previously that we'll take live. So Anne Morgan has one question she'd like to ask.
Hello, Conor. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly, Anne.
Great. Okay. Conor, that is so helpful. That is fascinating what you've been through there this morning. Just wonderful. So my question is really a communication-based question. I'm the chief executive of a group of builders merchants, and we're just about to roll out a fairly radical change in the way we want to price our customers. That would be a big enough challenge in normal times. And I'm just wondering if you have any advice on what I should be thinking of or focusing on to try and make sure that we communicate with our staff about this radical change, particularly in the times we are now when everybody's distracted by social distancing and fear of coronavirus, etc. Trying to focus in, get them to, how can we as a group communicate effectively in this time when there's lots of other distractions?
Yeah. And it's a good question. How do you, when people have so many other worries and things going on, become important to them?
Exactly.
And also, how do you get them to commit to this change? Not just nod their heads and not make noise, but apathetically.
Yes.
So, to me, one of the most powerful parts of communication is listening. And someone once said, to be truly listened to is as close to love that we can't really tell the difference. And, I found what's most persuasive for me is listening to other people. And what I would tell people, there's 4 questions that as a leader, you should just be asking over and over and over again. If you're walking through the corridor and you pass by someone, just ask them these 4 questions. And the 4 questions: what's going well? What's not going well? What would you change? What else? And what's going well? So you just get some positive. What's not going well? So you get them to reflect on what are they challenged by? What would you change? So you're gathering in their ideas. What else? And the first time you ask this to someone, they're going to look back at you with what? The second time you ask, they're kind of look curious at you. By the 3rd or the 4th time, they're going to see that you're serious about this. And leadership is about creating a shared vision. And creating a shared vision is not having the vision. It's giving people the space that they contribute their own eyesight. And my sense is, in most companies, every person in the company has a little piece of the jigsaw. And the little piece of the jigsaw has no value unless someone is putting it together as a jigsaw. But if the CEO decides to make the jigsaw without using all of the little pieces, you just get a different picture. You don't get the jigsaw. So for me, what I try and do, and this is a hard one for me, I like the sound of my own voice. I think I saw a Simon Sinek video clip as I was watching some YouTube this morning. And he told a story about Nelson Mandela. And he said, how did Nelson Mandela become such a great leader? And Nelson Mandela tells that his father was a tribal chief when Nelson was a young man. And when Nelson was a young man, he would go with his father out to the regional areas, and his father, as the tribal chief, would convene the local leaders. And the rule for a tribal chief in South Africa at that time was you're the last to speak. And what Nelson Mandela remembers of watching his father was he would listen to everyone give their opinion. He would ask a question, he would listen to everyone answer the question. And very rarely would he hear his father speak or give an opinion. And in the Simon Sinek video, he was saying what's important as a leader is that you're able to listen without giving positive acknowledgement or negative acknowledgement. You don't put your judgment in this process of listening. And I find this so difficult. I find it difficult to shut up. You've seen in this webinar, I'm good at spewing out noise, but leadership is not spewing out noise. Leadership is listening. And to me, the way I began a few years ago is just asking these 4 questions. What's working? What's going well? And each time I gather the Vistage Spain team together, we meet once a week on Zoom, and there's a check-in, and it's pretty much what's going well, what's making life difficult, what aims do you have for the week, anything else. And we listen to everyone else go through that. Sometimes there's no surprises, sometimes it's just the same, but sometimes there's something in there. And I know, Anne, perhaps that's not the ideal answer for how you package it up and send it out. Mm-hmm. But a huge part, so, I'm trying to think how to, so power is an interesting thing. Any use of power has a negative reaction. So imagine I have dinner with my daughters. I have a 13-year-old and a 4-year-old. My 4-year-old loves egg. Broccoli would be down there on the list of favorite foods. So most dinner times we'll sit down, we'll all start eating, and my 4-year-old daughter will start going on her egg. And I can see she's almost finishing the egg. And I'm thinking, if she finishes the egg and she hasn't touched the broccoli, she's going to look at us and say that she's full. So in order to avoid this, I'm just going to say, Sophia, I'd like to see you eat some of the broccoli. Now, in the moment I say this, what happens to the broccoli? It becomes radioactive, because now eating broccoli is not about a taste decision. It's about obeying my father decision. So the moment I say, Sophia, I'd like you to eat some broccoli, now she's going to eat the rest of the egg and she's going to start working on her potato. And she's not going to eat it just gently. She'll put her fork in, she'll look me in the eyes as she eats it. So now I'll move on to the nuclear version. I'll say, Sophia, if you don't eat all that broccoli, there will be no iPad all day today. At this moment, she'll take the fork and she'll put it into the broccoli, and she'll slowly move it towards her mouth. What do you think is going through my daughter's head as she moves the fork to her mouth? Option 1, I love my father. He has my best long-term interests at heart. Or 2, I'm going to show him if he thinks he can just push me around. And teeth washing is going to be difficult tonight. Pajama time is going to be difficult tonight. So one of these things as a leadership, there are times when you need to use power, which is enforce something. There are other times that people will allow you to influence them if you allow them to tell you what's going on, to tell you their concerns. And as a leader, sometimes when people are telling me their concerns, I feel the need to solve those problems. That's not the job. The job is to be this conduit in the way that Nelson Mandela's father was not there to solve problems. He was there to listen. And the role of leadership is to be the chief listener and hearer, so that everyone in the organization and all of those builders, what they know about you is you know what it's like to be them. You know what it's like to be them as they face the challenges. You know when they're frustrated. And if they have this sense that you know what their life truly is like, you know when things were going well, you know when they face challenges, you know what areas they're stressed about, and then you come back and you say, I have a proposal, that's when it starts to be received. And I guess this challenge is communication. If I want to start now, it's too late. The relationships of trust need to be built over days and weeks and months and years. But it's never a bad time to start building those relationships. And to me, those 4 questions: what's going well? What's not going well? What would you change? What else?
Yeah, that's great, Conor. Thank you very much for that.
Pleasure.
Well, Conor, thanks, Anne. And Conor, I'd love to continue this because I know there's several more questions and so forth, but we've actually reached our time. We keep it to an hour, so we'll just have to have you back, I think, if you're willing to come.
Well, the good thing is what I tend to do is take all these unanswered questions. I see James Geraghty, Dermot Duff, Sean O'Kane have good questions up there. I'll take them. I tend to write a little answer on my blog. I'll share it with you, Ronan, and you can make sure that some answer gets back to all of these
questions. Yeah, there's 8 of them there now, and I'll send another one. Look, Conor, thank you very much for that. That was superb, very insightful, and as I say, we do hope in the autumn when we're back running a series of leadership events that we'll be able to have you back as well as part of our faculty. Just before we go, just to say, next week we'll be joined by Professor Carlos Rey, one of our Timony faculty, to talk about management by purpose, which fits very nicely with what Conor has been talking there just in the last point especially. Carlos will also be joined by 2 fascinating guests, Imad and Raim Yunus, who are both Arabs based in Israel. They're an entrepreneurial husband and wife team from Nazareth, whose high-tech medical device company is in the vanguard of neurology, and they manufacture devices there in Nazareth. So they'll be sharing on some of their experiences of achieving a harmonious workforce in Israel, delivering some amazing innovations, while having a very diverse team, very diverse, but united around a common purpose. So I think that'll be a fascinating discussion with Carlos Rey and the Yunuses. So that's we'll leave it there. Thank you very much. It's on next Tuesday at 12 noon. Bank holiday here down in the south, so just be careful about that. Thank you, Conor. Well done, and we look forward to having you back again.
Pleasure, Ronan, and thanks to all of you who gave me the privilege of your listening.
Many thanks.